we've only talked a bit about displaying all or displaying none. Man, Google is loading very slowly for me this morning. Um, and let's talk a little bit about some of the other two. The subpages to display all or none. There's two other options. Relevant, we can display a breadcrumb trail, which if you see this, if I save this guy, you can see that what this does is it will start at whatever level you specify, and it will only display subpages that directly link into the current page, and it won't show any other pages at any level. So this is obviously very useful for displaying a breadcrumb trail. And in fact, with a custom template in the core for the Auto-Nav called breadcrumb, you can actually create a pretty nice breadcrumb right here with you know, the symbols between each one. And so that's really how you would use the Auto-Nav to display a breadcrumb trail. What you're doing is essentially building a nav that starts at a certain spot, goes down to a certain spot, and then only shows one level of, it only shows the direct parent or the direct link between wherever you started and wherever you're going in that level for each level. And that is how you would build a breadcrumb. Similarly, if I remove this custom template and whoops, and I go to relevant subpages, you can kind of see what this is all about. So relevant subpages is kind of a tough concept to explain. What this means is it contrasts a bit with showing all and with showing just breadcrumb. So when you're doing breadcrumb, if you're starting at the top level, you're going to show home, you're going to show about, you're going to show contact us sitemap, and then sitemap subpage, because you're currently on the sitemap. You're currently on the sitemap page, and you're showing all of the pages directly in line from wherever you start to wherever you end up, and only that one page at each level. Relevant subpages shows, instead of showing all subpages, it will show all subpages at every level that move into where you're currently at. So a good way to explain that better is if I add a subpage underneath guestbook, and then I add one underneath contact us. Oh, I can't because I've got my replace link with first and nav. Oh. So now you can see what's happening here is, since I've got relevant subpages, actually I'm gonna no, that should be fine. I've got relevant subpages, so for the Auto-Nav, the relevant pages to get from the top to the bottom to where it currently needs to go are about, contact us, sitemap, and sitemap subpage, because these are the pages that are in line from where the Auto-Nav starts to where it finishes. So if you have relevant subpages set to show up, you're going to show all the subpages at every level in that particular chain. So since about is a quote-unquote relevant page from where you start to where you end up, we are showing all of the subpages underneath that level. And then since contact us is in line to the current page, sitemap, we're showing all the pages underneath that level. But, you know, guestbook has a subpage, guestbook subpage right here. But since the chain of moving down from about to sitemap doesn't cover guestbook at all, no guestbook subpages are going to be shown. So if I actually change this from relevant subpages to all subpages, you would see guestbook subpage and blog hello world show up as well. So relevant really takes into account where you're starting and where you're ending up, and only shows you all, it shows you all subpages, but only underneath the levels of that are quote unquote relevant to where you're ending up. So with those particular options, you can build navs that are pretty that are it can cover a wide variety of different use cases. We've used the Auto-Nav on lots of different sites that have, they want to start at the top, but they only want to show the open section of the site that links down into the current page. All right. At this point, I think I want to walk through a little bit of how you might style the Auto-Nav. I'm going to go through a bit of how the HTML works, what type of HTML it outputs, and how you can style the Auto-Nav in the theme that you're working with. So in order to do that, I'm probably going to create a sitemap page on this page, or a sitemap Auto-Nav block on this page. And this will be separate from custom templates and drop downs and stuff, which we will get to in a little while. So what I'm doing right now is I am actually going to fork the theme that we are working on so that we can make changes without impacting the concrete5 core, which is always good. And first I'm going to actually make sure that this forking worked. God, I feel like I should get rid of the link to the Google fonts at this point because it's so friggin' slow. Okay, that looks like it is impacting correctly, more or less. Come on. Jesus. There we go. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is I will show you an example of what the HTML looks like in the Auto-Nav when we work on it. This one up here is a super simple example of the Auto-Nav. As you can see by default, the Auto-Nav is styled with lists. We try and make it pretty semantically pleasing HTML, valid HTML, and not built with a lot of markup in the page. Mostly can be styled pretty cleanly with CSS. And we give the Auto-Nav class, the Auto-Nav unordered list class, the class of nav. Probably could have chosen something like Auto-Nav, but we thought making it a little more generic might be nice as well. Then at that point, it's just a matter of nesting lists and anchor link tags. And there are two classes that are probably useful, and they get applied to both the list elements and the actual anchor links as well. There's nav selected and nav path selected. And these two are related, but they aren't the same. Nav selected is applied to the outer li tag and the actual anchor link for the particular page of the particular current page that you're on in the nav when it is for the current page that you're on in the nav. So nav selected will only be applied to one anchor link and one list item tag in your Auto-Nav, and it corresponds to the actual current page. Nav path selected is applied to every anchor link and every list item that appears outer to that nav selected tag. So this is a way to say bold every single containing page that links down into bold every single containing page that links down to the current page of your site in the nav. So what you could do is, if you wanted to give your nav, your active page, a blue background, but you wanted the pages that were the open sections to be bolded, you could do that. That's why we gave them two separate classes. And that's really all that there is to the HTML that the Auto-Nav outputs. You can see that here. This is a more complicated one. This is sort of a different example of the sitemap. Since the page that we're on is in this example is the sitemap page, it gets a nav selected class here and here, and then all the containing li and their a tags that show up there get nav path selected. Home does not, because we figured that home was going to be kind of annoying if it was always bold, because in concrete5 home always contains everything. So let's get to styling this. We can take a look in the Greek yogurt theme to see how we style navs. We style them pretty simply. All we do, as you can see here, is bold the nav path selected and the nav selected items. So I'm going to kill that, and I'm going to refresh. I'm actually going to try switching from wireless internet to wired internet, because this performance is really pretty bad. So I'm going to stop showing my screen for a second so that it doesn't get all flickery and weird for you. And then I'm going to switch Okay, I think that may improve the situation. All right, thanks for your patience, everybody. Turns out I was on wireless, but the Ethernet cable that I thought I had plugged into was actually moving behind the moving behind the desk and not connected to anything. So I have rectified that, and we will get back to styling this Auto-Nav. Okay, so I have removed all of the Auto-Nav styling from this example, which is why you can see that even though I am on the sitemap page, nothing is bolded at this point. And I'm going to just start to add in some nice styling here. I'm going to make things a little bit smaller. I'm going to use important CSS here because there's a lot of CSS that's already being applied here, and rather than try and figure out why certain elements aren't inheriting properly, I'm just going to kind of force my nav on them for the moment. But if you're building this nav yourself, you probably don't want to. You probably don't want to. You probably don't want to do that. I've never been a big fan of the bullets in navs. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to remove them. Now, one thing to remember is the AutoNav outer UL tag actually gets the nav class applied to it, but none of the inner UL tags get that. So that can be useful. You also, of course, can apply different margins to those tags. I'm going to give it a little bit more than 10 because I think that looks a little funky. And then I'm going to give it a nice little border left. Maybe we'll give it a little margin. And then I'm going to change this so that it only shows relevant subpages. Make it it's a little bit more real worldy. It's weird. And then maybe, let's say, we want to take the current page that we're on and we want to give it a really striking treatment. So what we're going to do there is we are going to nav selected, background color, that that's actually going to work too. And then finally, let's now you can kind of see something a little weird is happening here because I feel like our okay, there we go. Maybe the problem is just that everything looks bold. So I'm going to make it not bold and see if that helps. Because that sure looks bold to me. Not that one. Nope, I guess it isn't. Just looks it. Perhaps if I make things a little bit larger, it won't look so strange. Oh, that looks better. So at this point, you can see I have completely changed how the Auto-Nav functions, how it looks. We can do all sorts of, we can do some more exciting things. Adding a hover state to this thing. And I have my current page with a very striking treatment, and I have my the pages that contain it, they're bold, and then everything else does not have that. And of course, since it's CSS, you can actually see that this is affecting other parts of the site as well. For example, it's affecting the header nav because the header nav is built with the header nav is built with the nav as well. So how would I deal with that? Well, let's walk through it. The problem is if I want all of my side navigations to look this way, but I don't want any of the other built-in. I don't want to really affect it everywhere, for example. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to change this class from nav to side nav. I'm going to keep this all over here, and you can see that I'm using CSS to sort of segment off this particular thing. Now if I refresh, my header nav looks the same, looks better. My nav is back to the way it used to behave. And then what I can do is I can create a custom template for my Auto-Nav block. And that's what I'm going to do here. The easiest way to create an Auto-Nav custom template is to go into the Concrete Blocks Auto-Nav folder, grab view.php, copy it, go back out to your Concrete Blocks directory, create a template, create an Auto-Nav directory, open that, create a templates directory, paste view in it, and then rename it. I'm going to call this one side nav. Then, if I open this up, you can see we have all of this is the logic that takes the Auto-Nav data and turns it into HTML. So you can see we've got PHP code echoing out UL class nav. We've got all this stuff that takes care of closing lists. The Auto-Nav code is not the prettiest code. We actually have been working with some community members at cleaning this up a bit, so the next version of concrete5 might have an updated Auto-Nav view layer. We'll stay posted on that. Something that's easier to customize, because this is kind of rough. But fortunately, since we are only trying to change the class of the UL tag, it's pretty easy. All we have to do really is search for the word nav and find UL class equals nav. Well, we just change it to side nav, and we keep everything else the same, and then we change out our navs where we want to. So this is a stack in the site. It is a stack called side nav. I can change the custom template for this, since it's just an Auto-Nav block in a stack, and I'll say I'm going to give this a side nav. I'm going to give it a side nav custom template, and then I'm going to go back to my sitemap page in the site, which you'll notice is now looking the way it used to. I'm going to give it the custom template side nav. And now you can see our CSS changes are working for the Auto-Nav, but not impacting anything else on the site. And that's a pretty nice way of sort of rolling out these changes. Just to the part of the site that that you really want to roll it out to. And that's really all there is. That's really all that there is to creating an Auto-Nav template. One thing to keep in mind while you're doing this type of stuff, you will want to go into System and Settings in your concrete5 site, and then you're going to want to make sure that cache and speed settings, your basic cache is off. You should probably turn it back on when you deploy your site, but while you're developing custom templates in particular and working with the Auto-Nav in particular, it's nice to turn the cache off, because for performance reasons, we attempt to cache the Auto-Nav at certain points and cache the way that it looks in certain points. And that means if you're logged out, for example, and you're working with custom templates, you might not see any changes as you're working with them because we've cached them. So I would turn that cache off just in general while you're developing, and then turn it back on and make sure that everything looks the way you want it to. And at this point, do we have any questions? I'm going to get into some marketplace items that are custom templates for the Auto-Nav and show how they work a little bit. But I'd be happy to answer some questions. May not be able to answer all of them. Tim asks, is there a way to keep the Auto-Nav or other blocks excluded from caching at all times? There is, however, I am not. We will see if this works together. This is not necessarily something that we do all the time. I can explain how block caching works a little bit. In the Auto-Nav block controller, the PHP script that controls how an Auto-Nav, how the Auto-Nav block shows its data, there are a few different options at the top. And you can see here the ones relevant to caching are these 5 here. And I can go through, this is sort of this is kind of a topic that we get into in the advanced block development class if anyone has any interest. But basically what these do is cache block what you'd be most interested in is the cache block output and cache block output on post and cache block output for registered users. These and then the lifetime. These four basically say that it's okay for the Auto-Nav block to cache its output, but it's not okay for it to cache it if you're logged in. And if you are caching it, you should cache it for 5 minutes at a time, because these 300 is 300 seconds. And what that means is we believe that the Auto-Nav block is safe to be cached for unregistered users, because for every unregistered user, there is only one state that an Auto-Nav could look at any particular time. Because that's even if you are showing pages based on permissions, all unregistered users have the same set of permissions. So we think it's okay to cache block output, except not for registered users. So what you would want to do if you wanted to disable this for the Auto-Nav block, and this would be kind of experimental, and this is not ideal because you can't just change this one setting for the Auto-Nav. What you would have to do is copy the entire file, or actually you'd have to copy controller.php into your block's Auto-Nav directory, go into controller here, and then turn these to false. And that would do it, but it does mean that on any subsequent upgrade of concrete5, you have to make sure that there are no changes in the core Auto-Nav controller that you need to apply to your forked version of the Auto-Nav controller. So for that reason, it's much safer typically to fork the view layers of blocks than it is to fork the controller, because the controller, we try to make things in such a way that aren't going to just totally break backward compatibility, but it is possible that we rely on having a little bit more control over the controller than the view template.